Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Klein. I am currently wrapping up my iTech master's degree last semester here in the summer. I'm going to talk about my Capstone project, which was focused and centered on blogging and social studies classes and how that could have an effect on students. So really, what can blogs do for student success? I know a lot of times blogs, people just look at them and they say, kids click and pick and all that, almost kill and drill stuff. So I really wanted to focus on putting higher academics, higher standard, higher order thinking tabs, attachments, videos on the blogs for students to achieve. So not only was this teacher focused, but it was also student focused. So I was going to train the teachers at my middle school and how their blogs then could turn their students into successful students. So the overall goal of the Capstone, really, I wanted to increase the use of the school blog that we use. I was going to coach up all the sixth grade students, social studies teachers, I should say, to show them how to implement it. A lot of the teachers at my school really didn't use a blog, and if they did, it was very, very bare minimum basic. So I was going to show them some different activities they could put on there, because I really thought if the blogs were very used properly, kids not only could learn at school, but learn at home. I mean, to a degree, almost like a flipped classroom, if you will. So I was really going to gather the data from the blog use and did see if it carried over to achievement in social studies classes. So the way I was going to really work with teachers, I really loved the impact cycle, Jim Knight's book. I really enjoyed that a lot with Dr. C. I took that a few semesters ago. And what I was going to do is I was going to use that Peters method, which is a powerful, easy, emotional, compelling, reachable, and student-focused. I was really going to center on that when I trained and coached the teachers. A lot of them were not really technology sound at my school, so I was going to really sit down with them and try to incorporate some of the different things we use, some of the different learning styles, some of the different techniques, show them how to implement it. And then what we're going to do is when we implemented stuff on the blog, we're going to have a directly correlated assessment, be it a quiz or a test, and see if they did use the blog and see how it correlated to the scores. As for my student involvement, after I got the teachers really involved, I would then obviously train the students. I was going to show those kids how to use the blog daily, how to go home, how to find it, what to click on, and really get them to enjoy the blog and get them to use it. Maybe, I know some of them had technology issues, but I was really going to try to use a lot of those different coaching skills, even with the kids, and just try to increase engagement at home. And then hopefully the overall classroom engagement would carry over the next day, and it would be blogs, home, school, teachers, a perfect fit. All right, that was the goal. Time frame originally, we're going to start that in May of post-planning. Post-planning was a little bit different, and we're obviously going to get to the pivot we all had to do. But post-planning was going to really sit down with teachers, kind of show them what my plan was for the coming fall. We're going to use EduBlog. That was the blog we used at my school. And we were going to, I was going to train them on how to do stuff. I even had a little survey. I had a mini lesson form. That plan, though, was not face-to-face. That was over Zoom because we were all at home due to the COVID pandemic. The other change then in August, we were going to start teaching the kids EduBlog, but as you can see, I wrote there, major change with this because we were straight up virtual, as I'm sure many of us were. We weren't allowed to use EduBlog, so once again, another major change I had to go with. We're going to use CTLS, a completely brand new LMS, and then through September and December, like I said, a lot of different changes, a lot of different pivots, if you will, adapted change, whatever word you want to use, because no longer were we using the EduBlog system. We're going to now use CTLS, and then I looked at other ways that would be engaging with GimKits, Kahoots, Review Game Zone, and all that. We'll get to all that in a second. All right, and as I already mentioned, pivot. We definitely had a major pivot. The original plan I had when I wrote up a few semesters ago, use EduBlog, train the teachers face-to-face in May, train them a little bit in August, and then after that, we were going to then move on to training students how to use EduBlog face-to-face. Well, all of a sudden, we weren't allowed to use EduBlog. We had to use CTLS. That was going to be our all-inclusive digital learning platform for my county, Cobb County. They did not want us to use any of their blogs to use the students. They wanted a one-stop shop. So I had to change my Capstone completely. A little bit stressful for me, a little bit stressful obviously for the teachers. No one really knew how to use this system. So using a brand new blog on the fly and new learning system, we all had to adapt. 2020 was one of those years, and this definitely was a major pivot for me. As I said, this was going to be the original blog, EduBlog. Couldn't use that. This is what we were going to use, the new blog, which was called CTLS. Being a technology guy, I kind of jumped in and figured it out, but it was not as easy or not as well thought out. My plan, like I said, changed on the fly. So definitely some of the adjustments you can see. We had live sessions virtual. We weren't face-to-face, so it was more of a verbal checkpoint. We definitely been using Zoom. We used the chat box a lot and had kids put stuff in there. We had a lot of practice session. I made a lot of different tutorials, quick little videos that I would throw up for the kids to view every morning during their asynchronous time. We started school a little bit later in the day. Our county had a little shift in time. So during that asynchronous time in the morning or days off, the kids would try to understand CTLS better. The tutorials worked well. Practice sessions worked well. Things were going okay, but it definitely was a drastic change. Of course, another curveball. I'm a baseball guy. I got thrown a second major curveball because now we are finally getting used to this virtual CTLS. Now we're going to be back face-to-face. Some kids came back face-to-face. Some kids didn't. We were teaching. We were all juggling. As you can see in this picture here, that was a great picture. We were doing this. We were doing this. I was teaching face-to-face. I was teaching virtual. Teachers were now doing a lot of multiple jobs at one time. Pretty stressful for all. So new plan, crossing out plan A, go to plan B. Because I had some face-to-face, I had to change everything on my capstone to make sure that kids would get enough practice time, understand CTLS, learn it, still track data effectively. I had to look at some of my dates, shift those a little bit. Once I got going with that, once it went pretty well, I will say that my kids were using CTLS obviously at home, but even the ones that came face-to-face, they were going home and checking it out. Overall, though, the engagement level wasn't high. That might be due to a lot of different things, not just school. It could be middle school kids, but it could also be really due to the whole COVID. I'm at home, I'm virtual, everything is different. Overall, my students that were face-to-face were doing better, which I think that's just students learning face-to-face were doing better. Not sure if that had really anything to do truly with the blog. But I did want to make sure my kids that were at home and virtual learning. So one of the things I did is I went game ways. I went gamification. I figured that to get them a little more engaged, I need to find something. So what I did is I found a bunch of different games. Game Kit was a new one that the kids loved. There was a game that was like Among Us. Among Us was the big fad at this time. And it was Among Us teaching game. ReviewGameZone.com was a great one. Kids really got engaged a lot more. And kids then would be excited to really visit the blog. And that was really one of the main focuses of my blog, is to get them engaged. So the outcomes overall, once we adapted and changed and flipped and this and juggled, the overall capstone, like I said, I adjusted it massively, drastically changed it, pivot, curveball, whatever you want to say about it. It was positive. By the end of the semester, kids that were virtual did get a little higher on the directly correlated assessments that we used on CTLS. The kids that were face-to-face, learning face-to-face and going home, they did about 6% higher, which is not shocking to me. And really overall, a lot of my teachers kind of had the same. This is kind of all of our data together. I have co-taught classes, so mine were maybe a little bit lower, or some of my colleagues that had AC classes or just normal classes without co-taught teachers, without lower level students or ELL students or whatever, who normally score different on these, their scores are a little higher also. Overall thoughts of the capstone. Looking from where I started and from where I ended, it was somewhat the same, but it wasn't. It was still a blog, not the blog I pictured. It was still kids learning from the blog, not from what I really thought. Still trained teachers, training them on Zoom. Overall thoughts was it was positive and it did work and scores went up. Kids were engaged. Teachers liked it. Teachers were engaged, but in a different dimension, in a different universe, and in a different time zone. If it would have been as planned, it would have been interesting to see how I could have coached my fellow colleagues, not via Zoom face-to-face, how I could have coached and taught my students face-to-face, not virtual. It was an interesting capstone that I enjoyed. But as I said, I would like to do it. If I knew Doc Brown and I could jump in his DeLorean, go back in time 88 miles per hour, figure out what happened with COVID, and maybe we could live in a different time frame, I think I would have liked to do that. But sometimes you don't have choices in life. You just got to roll with it. So I rolled with it, positive, scores went up, and at the end of the day, that was the goal. At the end of the day, the kid was to get kids to learn, get kids engaged, get kids to blog, and that's what happened. Thank you very much for your time.